I will hunt you down wherever you're hiding, and I will eliminate you. I am justice.
A god of death and two boys with extraordinary intelligence and bent moral compasses is Death Note. But what is justice to you? Wouldn't it be nice to simply erase all the bad people in the world, to simply make them disappear so their corruption could no longer rot existence for those of us on the lower rungs of society? Hammurabi's code, seppuku, keel hauling, 75 to life, there's many ways to say the exact same thing. Justice. Everyone from an infant to a man on death row has an understanding of it, yet the man who's about to die and the infant whose toy was taken away have very different comprehensions of the same word. This tear in understanding also applies to Light and L. Despite their determination, brilliance, and temperament being nearly identical, there's one thing they completely disagree on, and that's how you define justice. But if you look up justice in the dictionary, it has a simple definition: rightfulness and lawfulness. That's it. It's this double definition that creates the critical fracture between a detective bent on saving the world from a mass murderer and a person implementing divine judgment in the name of a better world. When it comes to Death Note, Light and L are on two sides of a war, and both declare as early as episode 2 that they are in fact the side of good, the side of the people, the side of justice. Is either right, can both be right. Just like that dead man walking and that young child, they hold two definitions of the same word, and like history, justice can be defined and shown in many ways. A mother grounding her son, a teacher giving detention, a breakup with a cheating partner, jail time after a crime, death after a killing. When one idea can be shown in so many different ways, is any definition truly wrong? Is Light's killing justified? Is L's willingness to stake the lives of others and himself on arresting Kira justified? Is there truly a difference in the justice each holds in their mind? Well, let's get into it. When Light first finds the Death Note, he's just a senior in high school, top of his class, and planning to go into law enforcement, taking after his father. This sheds some light, ironically, on Light. He has a stark line between right from wrong from the very beginning. He holds a dark view of the world and believes it's rotting due to a few bad seeds spoiling the rest of the good population. It makes sense he'd want to join the force. On the surface, law enforcement is just finding the bad guys, quarantining them from society, and thereby letting the good people of the world thrive. But Light's thoughts on what must be done change drastically when he realizes the Death Note's power is real. This might seem like the start of the Death Note, the ultimate power over life and death, corrupting Light's mind. However, I believe that there's another reason for this sudden change. Up until that point, Light's definition of justice fit the mold of society's definition of justice. Cultures define rules for society, and those rules are built into us from birth. For example, do not kill. Doesn't matter where you are, it's morally wrong to kill in our world. Now, unless you count the death penalty, but that's part of the law, so it's okay? Regardless, this wasn't always the case. The Aztecs are a prominent example of a society that believed human sacrifice was not only just, but necessary to maintain their civilization. The samurai practice of seppuku is a different take on the same idea. The early Egyptians buried servants with dead pharaohs. They're all killing in the name of what was considered right for their culture. When Light found out he had the power to correct injustice as he saw fit, he seized the chance to fix it, even at a detriment to himself. When Ryuk first finds him, Light had already prepared to offer his soul in exchange for the power he was given and the deeds he had done. In this one scene, Light is showing that he not only understands that killing is wrong, but is willing to pay the price for his crimes. In other words, he still believes in his society's justice and the specific example that killing is a moral wrong no matter who you're killing. When Ryuk tells Light that he's not going to do anything to him and that the notebook is his, you can hear Light's surprise.
In other words, the notebook is now yours.
This is mine?
This is the breaking point when what society deems as acceptable no longer matters to Light, and so we shouldn't be surprised when L's definition of justice also goes beyond what society would deem okay. L is willing to do anything to catch Kira, even if it involves putting himself and others in harm's way. He demonstrates this in his very first public scene, throwing Lind L. Taylor to his death just to find out if Kira is in Japan. We see L repeat this personal brand of justice, going far beyond what should be acceptable, holding people against their will for days. days, months even, forcing a father to enact a false plot to kill his own son. Continually asking Light to take advantage of Misa, handcuffing himself to Light. Continually testing the task force like when Mogi leaves the team once the police no longer back the investigation. There's so many scenes when multiple members are uneasy about how L operates. He doesn't bend to society's justice because it doesn't go far enough for what is right. He follows a personal brand, and it's that one word, personal, that begins to uncover what justice really is. Each and every one of us has a feeling for what's right and what's wrong, and just like every other opinion we have as individuals, it differs slightly to greatly from anyone else's. Justice has come in thousands of forms over the years because we all see what's just differently. This all comes back to the original definition for justice, rightfulness, and lawfulness. Society decides the lawfulness part, but the rightfulness is completely up to each and every individual. Because of that, no one can truly tell you what is and is not right. Justice is just as subjective an idea as whether or not interspecies reviewers is gentai. Each person has a different opinion on it, and they're all valid to the individual. If justice is subjective to the person and only objective within societal laws, then Light's killings should be considered justified because it's a personal brand of justice, right? Well, yes and no. I don't see Light's killing as a personal definition of justice, and neither does he. Light has said many times that his killings are divine justice, and that changes everything. Personally, when I think about the term divine justice, my mind immediately goes to Zeus hurling lightning bolts down from Mount Olympus. However, it can also be used to describe Jesus in Judgment Day, or any movie where someone says something to the extent of, if God exists, then let him strike me down where I stand. The idea of divine justice is that a god will pass judgment on your actions because their judgment supersedes that of ordinary humans. They are the immortal, the all-knowing, the all-seeing. They judge right from wrong. Light eventually sees himself as a god, calling himself the god of the new world, but because of that, he's essentially forfeiting the right to say his brand of justice is personally righteous. A god's power comes from their followers and believers. The Aztec sun god Huitzilopochtli has no divine judgment in our modern world. No one follows his teachings. No one is sacrificing their hearts to him to make sure he conquers the darkness another day and that the sun rises again. In short, a god's power and therefore a god's judgment depends on people believing and accepting that god. And in most cases, if a god's judgment is accepted, it takes the place of the society's justice. You no longer need laws when a god deems what is and is not acceptable. That god becomes the law and in turn becomes justice. In Light's case, that means his divine judgment must be accepted over personal justice and societal justice. That is his true goal. It's not to rid the world of all evil, but to get his judgment of what is and isn't evil accepted as truth. And he does. The plot of Death Note takes place over more than half a decade. During that time, we see more and more of the world bend to the will of Kira. First, it's just hints of support online, then companies, TV stations, rallies, and even countries agreeing to fall under his rules. By the end of the anime, the entire world has essentially bowed down to Kira's judgment, and this is harshly highlighted by the fate of Mello's friend and distraction driver, Matt. Matt is shot to death after calmly surrendering and no longer posing a threat, with one of the gunmen simply stating, "Death is the only way to pay for crimes against Kira. No trial, no jury of your peers. If you break Kira's law, you die, and Kira's law is the world's law." In the end, the story of Death Note is beyond your average rogue taking the law into his own hands. This isn't just a Batman story of a vigilante making a city safer, it's the story of a young man with a sense of right and wrong that is taken by the power of the notebook, given a god complex, who then forces his justice upon the world until it submits to a new world order. That's the difference between Light's justice and L's. L has a personal righteousness that goes beyond normal law, but Light has created a new societal justice through the acceptance of divine judgment. In the end, Light's law has become mainstream and taken the place of society's justice. By the time Light dies, he's transformed what justice means, at least for a little while. But let me tell you a personal story. I was living with a random roommate as well as a lifelong friend in an apartment that was owned by her family. Her brother and his wife lived upstairs. I was promised an additional room in the attic on my lease to have office space. The attic was unfinished, so we all worked unpaid to try and finish it. After the demo work was done by us, the attic was never finalized. I had no heat in my room and froze through winter despite complaints. Eventually, this lifelong friend's brother, the guy who lived upstairs, made it his personal mission to make my life miserable. He filled my house with spray paint fumes multiple times, barged in unexpectedly, harassed me, etc. Turns out the other roommate was a junkie and had another guy and a dog living in his room. I even accidentally saved his life once when he OD'd. Nothing was ever fixed, and I suffered. After a year of this, I randomly came home to a police officer who handed me an eviction notice. The junkie who was illegally subletting and owned a dog that wasn't allowed on the lease, and myself were being thrown out. My lifelong friend would not talk to me. Her brother broke into my apartment and threatened myself and my girlfriend. Apparently, I was intimidating his sister. I called the cops, but the landlords lied to them and said I was told the brother could come into my apartment for renovation. I went to the court for a restraining order while I found another place to live. They refused, saying that the brother had only threatened me twice, and I needed 3 accounts. Eventually, I just fled for my safety and was homeless for a while once again. And the worst part is that it turns out that this was all a ploy for that lifelong friend of mine to have her girlfriend move in without any roommates. There was nothing I could do. The police wouldn't help me, the courts wouldn't help me, and I didn't have the money to sue the landlords. So you tell me, what's justice? I've seen time and time again that justice only works in favor for those with power. Now, while the anime ends on Light's death and us wondering what happened to the world after Kira's disappearance, the manga continues 1 year after Light's death, following Matsuda and Ide. They walk down the street discussing how the world has, for the most part, gone back to how it was before Kira's reign. They argue over whether they made the right choice a year ago with Light and Nier. Is it possible that what we've done isn't really right? Occasionally, I'm still thinking about that. I tried comparing Kira's society and our current society, and I understand I'm being warped, but no, personally, I don't think your way of thinking is warped. I didn't clearly say Nier is justice. You can tell through these few lines that while there's an acceptance of the outcome, there's conflict over whether a world without Kira is actually better than the one with him. The manga ends with hundreds, if not thousands, of hooded people worshiping Kira, waiting for his return. That final scene has massive impact and implications. While the world may seem to have returned to normal, there's obviously a new facet to it. A religion is formed around Kira, and he's in almost every way a comparison to Jesus. A human who died, whose followers now follow his teachings and await his return. Kira lives on in the teachings and beliefs of his disciples, and in that way, Light has become a part of the personal definition of justice for many people. And his way of thinking will continue to be passed on for generations to come. The final lesson of Death Note isn't that crime doesn't pay or that killing is evil. Death Note is a testament to the moldability of human morality. What we decide is right is only truly right for us in that moment, and tomorrow it may be wrong. Justice is a term highlighted by righteousness and wrongness, but in reality, justice is what we as a group decide it is culturally, and what we personally feel is morally correct. No more, no less. In the end, some people believe the death penalty is a good thing and some don't. It's a personal judgment that is given a societal thumbs up or down depending on where you live. Death Note reminds us that our views are incredibly fragile and constantly changing. Many of us come out rooting for a serial killer to win and reshape the world in his image. And if we can see Light's perspective of killing for years as having merit, then what does righteousness truly mean to us? What is righteousness at all? Death Note leaves us with less answers than questions. When you realize how truly invested you can get in someone's plot of world domination for the greater good, it becomes upsetting how unclear justice and righteousness truly are. The final boom of Death Note is not to change your perception of justice, but to show you just how murky your personal ideas of justice can be. And I think that's something worth understanding, or at least diving into. Hi everyone, this is Mike. Thank you guys so much for making it to the end of the video. I am on vacation, so I am not on camera. I just did this voiceover so the guys could edit it and put it out. I'm sure the video is fantastic. Death Note is one of my favorite anime of all time, so I'm glad that you enjoyed it enough to be here right now. Before I leave, I want to let you know that I am currently at PAX East, so if you are also at PAX East, come say hi, and to say a super congratulations to our ultimate lucky patron of the week, Luthi. Luthi, thank you so much, man. You are an excellent patron. You are the kind of patron that patrons should ascribe to be. And last but not least, our top patron, Calamity Cookie. Thank you so much for being the top patron, man. Your support for the channel is unrivaled. Like, thank you so much, man. It's awesome. But before I go, make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. That is Bonsai_Pop for both of those. In case you want a little bit of extra content or to keep up with us, check out our Patreon. And with that, my name's Mike. This is Bonsai Pop, and I'll see you next time. Bye.